Gracie Jiu-Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 67 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. My guest today is Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt Professor Eddie Kone, and we'll get to that in just a moment, but first, our Jiu-Jitsu quote, and that is, "Jiu-Jitsu is about much more than winning medals and titles. Those things will be forgotten long before we're gone. But the effect we have on our students and fellow practitioners as part of the lessons we share with them will live on forever." And that's from James 300 Foster. Okay, Professor Eddie Kone is a first-degree black belt in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. He's also an MMA fighter and owner and head instructor of the Eddie Kone Academy of Jiu-Jitsu and the Eddie Kone BJJ Association, which has affiliate schools throughout the UK. Eddie received his black belt in 2008 from Master Hoyler Gracie, making him at the time Hoyler's first European black belt. In 2012, Eddie received his first degree from Professor Rafael Lovato Jr. During his career, he's been a coach to many MMA fighters and champions, including UFC fighter Paul Simtex Daly, World Extreme Cage Fighting and UFC fighter Brad One Punch Pickett, as well as many others. In this interview, we talk about his introduction to martial arts and doing martial arts prior to jiu-jitsu, his BJJ competition experience, his MMA career, and he maintains a record of 4-0-0 in MMA. We also discuss his acting career, including his recent involvement in the film Romans, and his upcoming camp with Hiron Gracie, who will be coming to his academy, as well as many other things. After the interview, stick around for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment, where today's guest host for the segment is holistic transformation coach and author of the book Own Your Life, Carrie Hakoma. So I know you're going to enjoy this interview, so without further ado, let's talk to Eddie now. Okay, I'm speaking with Professor Eddie Kone. So Eddie, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for taking time to talk to me today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show, and it's great to be here.
All right. So you sure have a lot going on, it looks like, and we're going to try to get to as much of that as possible to tell everybody about it. But first of all, you're the owner and head instructor of the Eddie Kone Academy of Jiu-Jitsu, as well as director of the Eddie Kone BJJ Association. So let's just start off by having you tell us a little bit about your academy and that association.
Okay, so, I'm the head instructor. The academy has been running in Europe since 2000 and, let me get this right, 2002, I believe. So we've not always had our own academy in that time, but what we've done is, or what I've done is just taught out of places, as most people here did. So whether it's YMCAs or leisure centers or anything like that, and then slowly over the years built up into having a headquarters and eventually forming the association, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So that's basically what's happened. Of course, it's not been an easy task. There are ups and downs, and our association, we're very strict with the association and the teachers that are involved in the association, as well as following the curriculum that we have. Every instructor must follow that curriculum, and there's a whole heap of other stuff that goes with it, like belt testings, and various other stuff that goes on behind the scenes in order to make it happen.
I'm finding a lot of places are adopting curriculums. Even places that normally or in the past didn't do that. Not too long ago, a lot of places, a lot of schools, a lot of organizations just kind of had a free for all, if you will, and just whatever they wanted to teach. So I really like the approach of having a structured curriculum. I think it really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, the curriculum for us is paramount. It's the matrix of what we do. I believe that if you have a curriculum that runs in every school, then every student that attends that academy or my association is able to fit in and slot in, and they know what's really going on there. There's no one ever is going to go into the academy and learn, say, a footlock today, and tomorrow they're learning a choke from the back with no connection or no connective points in those positions, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So take us back a little bit. Tell us how you got started in martial arts. I believe you did a little Muay Thai prior to Jiu-Jitsu. So just tell us how that all began for you and what led up to today.
Yeah, when I was very young, we're talking, I'm quite old now, but but very young. I remember going to a karate school for like 2 weeks. And when I was younger, that seemed to be the thing everyone was into. So my parents took me along to a karate school. I was there for about 2 weeks, and for some reason I just couldn't get along with what was happening in the school. As in, it wasn't for me. I could tell that instantly, even at that young age. I knew that it wasn't something that motivated me. After that, I got into Muay Thai. I did that for about 4 years. I had a few Muay Thai fights, a few kickboxing matches. But then again, I always, and it's a cliche, but I felt like it wasn't complete. There was something that wasn't there for me. There was something missing. I had some friends that did judo, and then we would train together, but there was always something missing. And that was the Thai boxing kind of background. I was never, aiming to be a professional or a professional fighter back then. I just wanted to learn, I wanted to play sport and wanted to learn to be proficient, I guess, should the need arise.
Okay. And how did that lead you into jiu-jitsu?
I actually went out to Shooter Box Academy in Curitiba, Brazil.
Nice.
Really nice. I mean, I grew up watching the early UFCs, as most of us did, in the Pride stuff. So my first visit was over there to Vanderlei's gym. Can you imagine walking into that? That was insane.
I
that
can
was
only imagine.
It's one of the most insane things that I'd ever seen as a youngster, walking in and having Vanderlei, screaming and shouting in the class. You had Shogun there, baby Shogun was there. Insane. It was an insane time. We were there for a week. And while we were there, I had heard about this family called the Gracie family. But I imagine the name to be grey as the colour and C spelled SEA. So it was kind of my interpretation of it. And when I researched while I was there, I met some Brazilians, and they were telling us, this family, they accept challenge fights, they're fighters and this and that. And I then became kind of familiar with what they were. And at that point, I didn't get time to go and see them. I came back to the UK and then wanted to check out more about it. And I ended up in a traditional jiu-jitsu club here in the UK, Japanese jiu-jitsu. And of course, the UFC was circulating in 93 at that time. The VHS was out. And I remember a friend of mine giving me the VHS, and I was like, wow, that's insane. No rules, no rounds, no nothing, just like, it was banned in all these states. It had a massive hype around it. And I remember the cover of the first UFC video. It was the UFC guy kind of holding the world on his shoulders, and it had like 4 pictures on it. And one was I can't think of his name, the Taekwondo guy, and he had all blood around his eye. Yeah. The other picture was of Maurice Smith, I think, not Maurice, or one of the guys, and Hoyce, of course, in the gi. And after watching it, I really gravitated towards it. I went to this Japanese jiu-jitsu school, and they were like, yeah, we do that stuff here. And of course, being so naive, I stuck at that for a little while. And then, believe it or not, we came across a guy in London who was teaching the sign on the school. You would never believe it was crazy jiu-jitsu.
That's great.
And he was a Brazilian guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but a lot of the original guys who started jiu-jitsu in London will know who I'm talking about. Wow. And the place was over in London Bridge, and the sign was handwritten on the door, and it said crazy jiu-jitsu.
That's great, man.
And that was kind of it for me. It took off from there. I got the bug. I got the jiu-jitsu virus. And next thing, I met a guy who was my original instructor here in the UK, a really nice guy called Mark Warder. Mark Warder was Hoyce Gracie at the time. He was a white belt with 4 stripes, I believe, when I began training with him. Or he may have been a blue belt. I think it was that long ago. And I began training with Mark, and Mark was training with Hoyce. Mark had gone out to the Torrance Academy in California. And this is when Hoyce and Horian and the kids were all there. They were all together in Torrance, and he was bringing the stuff back. And you know, he opened what I believe to be the first Hoyce Gracie Jiu-Jitsu network. It was called back then, the Network School here in London. And I was part of that. And then obviously through that, I met Hoyce. I remember Hoyce not really being able to speak English. It was a few words here and there, you know. Wow. But yeah, it was good times. I was looking over some pictures earlier in the academy that I have on the wall, and there's some pictures on the wall of those individuals that we just spoke about.
I've heard really often where one person will be out at the academy way back in the day, and they go back to where they're from and just start spreading it, and it's just always interesting and fascinating to hear someone's account of that and how it's just so widespread. These people went out there and then they came back and spread it to those around them, and it just kept going like that. It's very cool.
It's absolutely insane. I mean, I've known Hoyce probably the best part of... Me and Hoyler was talking about this when he was in London recently. We were just having a chat, and Hoyler was like, man, I think you've been training like 20 years. And when he said that, it was like the age kicked in, I think, wow. And then we were kind of trying to make a verbal timeline of when we first kind of met. And it was after the Sakuraba fight. I remember in Gracie Almeida, I was out there when Hoyler left for that fight, and I was training with Holker. And I'd missed him at that point. And then I remember him training with him after that when he still had the scars, the black eyes and stuff like that. Wow. And I've got a picture of that. And yeah, we were just having a chat about how long it's been.
That's great, man.
Insane, yeah.
Well, you say you are old. You certainly don't look very old, so I won't ask you your age, but you're aging well, whatever it is, if you've been at it for 20 years, man.
Man, I'm trying. We all kind of try, and jiu-jitsu, as you know, takes us through many peaks and valleys.
Absolutely.
And my wife says to me a lot, "Why don't you ever sleep?" And I'll tell her, I've got a dream that's worth much more than sleep at the moment. Wow. And the dream is, to really kind of keep this Gracie Jiu-Jitsu thing alive and keep it here. And everyone around us is now kind of doing that, and the association is doing that. And that's the goal I have.
Beautiful. And you certainly are realizing that dream. You're on your way for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And the great thing is, I'm bringing everyone with me. I'm not doing this alone. I'm bringing absolutely everyone with me. And anyone else who wants to jump on and be part of it, they're more than welcome.
All right. So you were talking about Master Hoyler. So how did that relationship begin? And you ultimately received your black belt from Master Hoyler, and I believe that made you the first European black belt under him, correct?
Correct. Yeah, correct. This relationship goes back a long time. It began with Hoyce. Like I said in the beginning, Mark Warder was training with Hoyce Gracie in London. Hoyce obviously couldn't be here that often. So Mark began to train with Maurizio Gomez, Roger Gracie, all those great names that we have here in the UK. And Mark made a conscious decision one day that because he'd been training with them, that his jiu-jitsu was kind of progressing with them, it would be wrong for him to represent Royce if he's training with Maurizio and Roger and those amazing guys that we have here. So Mark parted company with Royce, and a little while after I parted company with Mark, because I always wanted to learn from Royce and from that side of the family. But nothing against Maurizio and Roger and those guys, because those guys are absolutely amazing. But for me, I was more interested in the self-defense. Royce would always come in to teach seminars and show self-defense, and that was the main thing for me. So a little while after, I spoke with Royce and was like, listen, how do I go about setting up a network and becoming a chapter leader or however it works? How do I do that? And Royce said, listen, he said, it wouldn't be right for you to be a student of Mark or a prior student, and then it would look bad like you'd left Mark to start your Royce Gracie network. But let me introduce you to Royler. And, I'd known a little bit about Royler, then everyone kind of saw Hickson and Royler. And so Royce actually made the introduction to me and Royler. But Royler was in Brazil at the time, and financially it wasn't viable for me to get out there. So I was given a contact for Rosendo Diaz and David Adif in New Jersey. And I contacted the guys, and the guys were like, yeah, we're having Royler over, come down. And I got to talk to them through the internet, actually went out there a few times, trained with Dave, who's absolutely amazing. I heard his interview with you, and the guy's an absolute monster.
Yeah, he's phenomenal.
Yeah, he's an absolute beast, that guy. I mean, I learned a lot from him. He's an amazing individual, and if anyone has the chance to go there and train with him, they should. So then I met Royler through the RGDA, which was the Royler Gracie, David Adif Association, which again, I spearheaded the program here for them originally, with the blessing of Dave and Royler. But prior to the RGDA, I was out in Gracie Almeida for back and forth, maybe 4 or 5 times, I think. Trained with Holker, Royler, all of the old guys that were there. Saulo was there at the time. Who else was there? Shanji, Vinny Magalish. I went to Gracie Tajuka. So I was kind of already in that circle through Royce. Vinny Ayeta, there were so many of the guys there. And then the connection was formed with me, Dave, and Royler. And then it just grew from there, into what it is today.
Beautiful. So I was a little surprised to didn't realize that you got your first degree from Professor Rafael Lovato Jr. Tell us
Correct,
about that. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so basically, as you know, Saulo is Royler's black belt. Mm-hmm. Lovato is Saulo's black belt. Yes. If that makes sense. That's the chain of lineage. So we had Lovato out here for a couple of seminars. Like, he's the only kind of non-Gracie we've had out here, although I consider him part of that lineage.
Sure.
So I became friends with him, as I do with everyone. And he was out here and he was like, hey, how long have you been training? And we got into this whole conversation. And this was during the time where I had just parted company from the RGDA. Not just, but a few years after. I think I parted 2008 or 2007. And this conversation went back and forth. And he was like, you need to be, what was the word? I can't remember. There's a little clip on YouTube of it, of Rafael doing the degree. And Rafael was like, you need to be acknowledged for your work and what you're doing and your time spent, and you're constantly teaching. You've not stopped teaching. And I kind of gave him the overview of what we were doing. And he was like, on behalf of everyone, I would like to do that, and blah, blah, blah. And that's how it went down with Lovato. And it was such a nice thing. Because he's from Saulo's from Royler, and the lineage was still there, and it was one of those things. It was completely unexpected, and the conversations we had, it kind of made sense at the time. But I didn't want to seem disrespectful to Royler and the guys over there. But Royler was completely supportive of it, and he was cool with it.
Yeah, that's really cool. He seems like such a great person.
Who, Royler?
Well, of course Royler, but Rafael as well.
Rafael is amazing. Rafael is one of life's true gentlemen. He really is. And he's a fun guy to hang out with as well and train with. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, and making his mark in MMA now.
So I've seen. Yeah. He's definitely doing that. I think that's the natural progression for him. Nice. Such a talented guy. Same with Roger and the rest of the guys.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your competitive days in BJJ. So you've had a number of successes, including the British Open BJJ bronze medalist, Gracie Invitational European BJJ silver medalist, and you received GrappleFest Most Technical Fighter Award as well. Tell us a little bit about your competitive BJJ days and what that was like for you.
Okay. I'll be honest with you, Marty, I'm not a competitor. I don't see myself as a competitor. That's not something that motivates me to do.
Okay.
But what I wanted to do was just test what I know, what knowledge I have. Why not just go there once or twice, have a look at it? And I haven't competed that much. People, they see those kind of, bronze medal here, bronze medal. I haven't really competed that much. I'm not a competitor. It doesn't motivate me. I don't wake up every morning and go, I must go and compete. I acknowledge those that do, and I think it's amazing. They do an amazing job. But for me, it's not something that motivates me. The competitions for me were just about testing the level of skill that I had at that time against other practitioners of jiu-jitsu. And also, with always having the mindset of being a teacher, I was going to encounter my students that wanted to compete, and I didn't think I would be in a position to say to them, yeah, you should go in and compete and do this and do that without being there myself and without feeling that, if that makes sense.
It very much makes sense, and I share that kind of outlook or philosophy. I very much appreciate competitors for sure, but it's not something that motivates me personally to a large degree at all. But you did test yourself, and great for you for doing that. You also tested yourself in the MMA arena. I think you had a record of 4-0.
Correct, yeah, and that was fun.
Yeah.
That I enjoyed more than the
jiu-jitsu competition.
The straight competition, because straight jiu-jitsu competition took away 50% of my jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Because, I'm not saying anything, this is not a negative thing that I'm saying, but Gracie Jiu-Jitsu and our sportive cousins, if you like, it's two separate objectives. They came from the same place, but have become two separate identities, if that makes sense.
Yes.
If you practice what I actually call it traditional Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Some call it pure, some call it, whatever they call it, but traditional Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, we have the strikes, we have, the clinch, we have the takedowns, we have the ground grappling, we have the weapons defense, and all of that is governed by the mindset and the philosophy behind it. So when I entered those MMA fights, and I could actually use the pisau, I could actually use the strikes, and if you see some of the fights, I use very few strikes. I close the distance, and it's really traditional jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that I was kind of more excited to do that.
You felt less restricted, right?
Yeah, and not just less restricted. I felt I could express myself more through that. And that was all that was. That was just another outlet for me, because I knew as a teacher further down the line, I'm going to encounter students that wanted to go into that arena and fight in MMA. And I wanted to be able to stand there and tell them, I've been there and this is what I felt and this is how I developed.
Yeah.
Rather than, standing back and kind of, I always say this to my students, there's a big difference between knowing and believing. I can believe I'm the best and never test that belief, never put that to any test, or I can, through my experience, know what I'm capable of and put that to the test and know my limitations.
Absolutely.
And that's basically what I did.
That makes sense. There's theory and then there's real application, whether you're talking about any number of things, but certainly in professional fighting, if you're going to be coaching people, you want to be able to say you've been there and you've seen it firsthand. And
definitely.
And your association does have its own fight team. It's called Bloodline Fight Team.
That actually has been disbanded a few years ago. It's not. Right. We can talk about that. What happened there was, we acquired a lot of guys and girls who wanted to fight MMA.
Yeah.
But then what I found for me was it kind of depleted my energy. I was, it's a very selfish sport, MMA. No one really wants to. I mean, when you think about it, I have no idea what MMA is, mixed martial arts. I can see what they're labeled it, but it's a hybrid of a lot of different things, and no one's really good, or no one wants to get good at one thing. At least have a base,
Right.
and then grow in that base and develop around that base and add to that base. A lot of MMA guys, they are very selfish, and that depleted me of a lot of my energy. And I found a lot of the time, it became a toxic environment, if that kind of makes sense.
Absolutely.
So that got disbanded, and now I kind of troubleshoot with a lot of people. They bring me in for more of troubleshooting and trying to help the guys prepare for the octagon, and that works much better for me.
Okay. Yeah, and you recently were able to help. You cornered a fighter in Bellator.
Terry Brazier.
Yeah.
Terry's a little different. I actually see Terry as a member of our team. Terry is, he came into the academy, and I looked at this young kid, and he's going to be a jiu-jitsu teacher for sure. He has that mindset, definitely. He understands what jiu-jitsu is, because I'm not just going to teach anyone anything. They have to be the right. I'm not looking for the best. I'm looking, for the right people to come through the door and learn, especially in that environment.
Well, I respect that a lot. There's a lot of people who are really attracted to MMA these days, and and coaching opportunities, and kind of start seeing stars in their eyes or dollar signs or whatever. But I like how you seem very grounded, and you know what's really important to you, and you're looking long term on what kind of a real effect you want to have on people, and with a lot of depth in their jiu-jitsu.
Definitely. I mean, we're changing lives. People walking through our doors, and we're not thugs.
Right.
We don't have. Hoyler says this all the time. He always says it. I always laugh. He says, "Look, we're not ugly guys. Look, my face is intact. I can have a normal conversation."
That's great.
I'm not a big guy, and I laugh because I've heard him say that so much, and it kind of resonates through me to my students as well.
Yeah.
I tell my students, you're all tough guys and girls. You all turn up in the rain, the sleet, and the snow, and you're all learning something, and we're all sharing positive energy here. And that's the best thing. Everyone walks out intact from the academy. No one's walking out, beaten up, and
that's great.
All that, that's not very forward.
That's great. There's plenty of places out there if someone wants to just prove how tough they are and just beat each other's butts. But it's so much better to foster each other's growth, mutual support, mutual respect in an academy environment.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, we kind of helping these people. We're saving them, because. No disrespect, they could end up somewhere where they really don't want to be. I've heard so many stories that someone went to a jiu-jitsu lesson, or they went somewhere, and the first thing the guy was teaching them was a flying triangle. Their first day in the school.
That's crazy.
Exactly, and this happened recently. I actively encourage my students to go out and see the beautiful world of jiu-jitsu. No matter what school it is, go there, be humble, take a class, and then make your own informed opinion from doing that, One, because I'm very confident in what we teach, in our curriculums, in our lineage, in our heritage, and what we do. I'm very, very confident in that. So I actively encourage them to go and do that. And most of them, the students, they all come back and they're all like, wow, it's so different. It's so different. The emphasis is on sparring and beating the crap out of each other, and, showing the new guy how tough they are, and that's completely not what it's about. So we try to build a healthy, learning, creative environment where, I always say this to everyone. I'm not a politician. Our academy has no politics. Everyone is welcome to come to our school, no matter what school, no matter what flag, no matter what association you're from. You'll be treated with respect and courtesy, and that's all we expect in return.
Very nice, man. Let's switch gears just a little bit, Eddie. And one of the things you are into very heavily is acting. So tell us a little bit about that. I know you, or I understand you were recently involved in the film Romans with Orlando Bloom and Janet Montgomery. So tell us about that experience and just kind of how you got into that whole acting arena.
I'm not really an actor, if I'm honest. I've never taken an acting lesson in my life. It just so happens the producers of the film train in my academy.
Nice.
that always helps, you know.
That's
always...
really well.
So they were asking me about fight choreography. And you have to understand, producers are and directors are very creative individuals. Just like jiu-jitsu guys, we're very creative. So we're one and the same on different realms, but jiu-jitsu is the common ground. And so we were talking one day, and he was like, "Hey, how would you like to get involved and do something?" And I was like, "No, I'm not an actor. I'm not doing that." And he kind of, and Paul almost said, "No, you are going to do it for the fact that you're saying you're not going to do it." And yeah, it just worked out well. I ended up in Romans with another student of mine from the academy. The film, I think, is out already. So we did that. Orlando was amazing. Janet Montgomery was amazing to work with. And that was a really, really good film. Just, you know, it's a film that came out and was really, really well done. I had an amazing time doing it. The spin-off from that was I was involved with another film involving James Cosmo. From Lord of the Rings. And again, you know, amazing directors, the same producers, and then it just spiraled out of control from there. And now I'm kind of sitting back and trying to focus more on jiu-jitsu than anything else. But the more I focus on jiu-jitsu, the more benefits and blessings I have in my life, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, you meet so many amazing people. Once they know you do jiu-jitsu, they're like, "Hey, I've always wanted," and you know, you get talking to them. And in our academy, we have everyone. We have celebrities, we have builders, surgeons, you name it, they're in there. Just regular people, police officers. You know, I was a police officer for 18 years.
Oh, wow.
In London in law enforcement. You know, I traveled around. I did a lot of stuff. I learned so much application of jiu-jitsu when I was a police officer, and I brought that experience not only into the police, but I brought that into my students, having to deal with these incidents every day. You know, so I kind of learn from all angles. You know, I'm the kind of person that would much rather be in the class learning from someone than be in front of the class teaching, because I honestly have learned so much, and I'm still learning all of the time.
Well, I would imagine that's one of the things that people can relate to you so much, that, you know, you're one of them. You're not just someone up in front of the class performing. You literally are one of them, but you have a lot to share, so that's put you where you are. So
yeah,
much respect for being in law enforcement as well, man.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, man. I did that for 18 years, and you know, an incident happened here in London which I had to contend with myself, and you know, I couldn't justify to myself what happened, so it was better that I kind of left, resigned and walked away from it. But the bonus of it was it pushed me into becoming the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu teacher here in London, you know. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, ever, you know. Yeah. I'm not making, you know, people think you're going to teach jiu-jitsu and be rich and do that. Listen, it can happen. There's a few of us that it can happen to, you know, but you have to dedicate your whole being, you know. And I tell everyone, when I go into the academy, I'm giving my students no less than 120%. If I'm going in there to give them just 100%, I'm not going in. That wouldn't justify Grandmaster Elio Gracie's art. That wouldn't justify Hoyler's teaching, Hoyce's teaching, Hickson's teachings to me. And that wouldn't be right on my students, you know. Imagine you turn up every day and in front of you is a grumpy black belt. Can you imagine?
Yeah, not cool.
You know, no, and we're not just teachers. You know, I tell this to everyone. You know, we're social workers. We're the big brother. We're the guy who takes everyone else's, you know, bad day at work on their shoulders when they come into the academy, and we make them forget what's going on outside the academy for an hour or two, you know. And I think that's such an amazing gift to give people.
Yeah, well said. I couldn't agree more. And before I forget, I want to say a shout out to one of your students, Liam Wandy.
Yeah, Liam Wandy. He's a student of
brown belt and runs the site Part-Time Grappler. So never have met him in person yet, but I've had conversations with him through Facebook. So great guy. So shout out to Liam.
Yeah, Liam's cool. I was with Liam this evening. Yeah, Liam's a great guy. And he said the same about you as well.
Awesome. You also have a blind instructor at your academy. I saw a short video. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with that.
Zaid is one of life's amazing individuals. Listen, this guy, when people tell me, it was raining, I was tired from work, I didn't want to go to the academy, I broke my fingernail. This guy is blind, and he turns up at the academy every day, twice a day, on his own. What's your excuse? True. This guy motivates me to be there. I see this guy on the mat, I start smiling. I walk in, I just smile. This guy's there, ready to go, And, he's blind. He's registered blind, so he's registered with a disability. He was training jiu-jitsu before he came to our academy. But he was overlooked by the academy where he was training at. He was kind of sidelined because they knew he was blind, if that makes sense.
Wow.
He found me through a mutual friend of ours. He came to the academy. We started to train, and he just fell in love with the academy. He's such a charismatic character, he's in the academy. And the one thing that I've spent the last 3 years, training with him, his sensitivity to jiu-jitsu is amazing. Like, I'm talking about, this guy's a stone cold killer, He rolls with black belts and terrorizes them. He's that kind of guy. And people go, I feel sorry for him, that he's blind. And, there's that part to it. But if he could see, maybe his path would be different. Maybe he wouldn't be doing jiu-jitsu. The guy's insane. He's going to be a very, very good instructor. He's fought in competitions. And there's a rule that the IBJJF have, or not a rule, I think it's more of a gentleman's agreement, where if the person has a visual impairment or blind, that they give the grips to each other, if that makes sense. They bring them together. Yeah. He refuses to do that. If you look at some of his videos, he fights, without grips.
Wow.
And, he's pulled off some amazing stuff. There's a technique in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, which is a shoulder grab. When someone grabs your shoulder, you wrap the arm and submit them standing.
Yes.
He pulled this off in competition.
Oh, wow. Beautiful.
Yeah, and we highlighted it on our blog and stuff like that. And, it was amazing to see.
Very cool. I love hearing stories like that. People overcoming challenges and obstacles of various forms in their life and really taking it, to where they can, regardless of quote-unquote limitations or their situation, man. That's awesome. It's very inspiring and motivational, and much respect to him.
Yeah, agreed. He's amazing, that kid. And he's so young, so talented. And, we have a lot of UFC guys that come to the academy and train, or I take them to train with him. And they always ask me, can he be part of the next training camp? Can he, he's that good. And that's not even I'm not giving him praises, or he is that good, you find these phenoms in every academy. He's that guy.
Wow. Incredible. So let's talk a little bit about your upcoming 2-day winter camp with Hiron Gracie. Tell us about that and when it is and how people can get involved in that.
Yeah. Okay, so Hiron's the guru. He's such a talent, he kind of embodies a lot of Grandmaster Helio Gracie's theories, and he seems to be that guy. I met him a couple of times in Torrance when he was a blue or purple belt when I was out there. And yeah, he's someone who, whenever we want a seminar, I always ask my students, who would you like to have over? Who would you like to have? And let's reach out to them and let's see if we can get them, because at some point in my journey of jiu-jitsu, I either have trained with one of those members of the Gracie family, or I'm in touch with them through someone else, whether it be social media or through connections within the community. And I've had lots of conversations with Hiron on Twitter and on other social media stuff. And I'm always asking him, when are you going to come to London? When are you going to come to London? And then he was like, yeah, I can come to London on these dates, which is March 25th and March 26th for this 2-day camp. Well, it was going to be a seminar. And I was like, a 1-day seminar. I was like, why don't we make it a camp? Why don't we do it 2 days? And then Hiron was like, he got all excited. I was talking to him on FaceTime. He was like, yeah, why don't we make it a camp? Why don't we make it 2 days? Why don't we have a meal? Why don't we, and the vibe I got from him was like, yeah, I want to come over. I want to see the students. I want to hang out. I want to train. I want to roll, and I want to spar with you guys. And and that's how it came together. And the momentum has picked up incredibly. It really has picked up incredibly. I'm actually surprised how quickly it's picked up, because the two kids, Hiron and Henna, they get a lot of flack, unnecessarily, because those guys can teach. I've been around some teachers, and those guys can teach. And not only can they teach, Hiron's gone out and met Morris and put it on the line, and that deserves props and respect, if nothing else. But no, we've had a lot of interest, and the people that are attending the seminar, apart from my own students, believe it or not, there's a lot of black belts coming in, from other schools, which shows you the gravitational pull of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes, for sure. That's great. And yeah, I can't say enough about Hiron. Amazing teacher, and I'm sure it's going to be an incredible event. So I'm excited for you guys.
Yes, it's going to be insane. I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, that's the 25th, 26th of March at the headquarters here in London.
All right. If you haven't made plans to be there for that event and you're in that area, certainly reach out to Professor Eddie to make those plans. So Eddie, with a little bit of time we have left, a couple more questions. What's something that most people might be surprised to learn about you? And with all that you've done, what are you the most proud of?
Okay, what people will be surprised to learn about me is, I don't know, what don't they know? I didn't always have, I didn't come from a very blessed kind of background. My background was growing up, I don't know what you guys call them out there, but we call them here children's homes, like, what do you call them out in the States? I can't remember, but it's like
foster homes? Or
yeah, it's more than, they're like community.
Homes?
Yeah, like group homes.
Okay.
So people see my Instagram and they're like, wow, he's doing a lot of stuff, this and that. But back when I was young, I had nothing. A lot of people have a sob story, and this isn't a sob story. I wouldn't have this any other way. If I could live my life 100 more times, I would have the same thing again, because all of my values and qualities and everything that I have, good and bad, come from that. So that's maybe a little insight into something that most people don't know about, because, people judge on social media and they quit. He has a nice academy. The guy has a nice car. What people don't understand is, like, what I said to you earlier is, I'm following a dream that's worth more than any of my sleep. And that kind of thing has motivated me throughout my whole entire life. The second thing, you asked me what I'm most proud of. Most proud of jiu-jitsu wise would be my students, all of them, each and every one of them. To date, that's the proudest thing for me, that these guys turn up to give me the time to teach them. They could choose anyone in the world to teach. Remember, I'm not a world champion. I don't have those accolades. I'm not an MMA champion. I'm a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu black belt. And they turn up. So that's one of the greatest things for me, in jiu-jitsu wise. The other great thing for me is, I could have chosen any instructor in the world, to train with. And, I honestly believe I happen to choose the best guys in the business, and a lot of the guys that are associated with them are the best guys in the business. And that's my own belief, and that's something that I stand by.
Well, man, you have my respect. You certainly are living the dream, or pursuing your dream and fulfilling it, and touching lives, many lives along the way. So much respect to you. And
it's only the beginning. There's a lot of stuff.
You just dropping the pebble in the water, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your insights and letting us get to know more about you, sir. I really do appreciate it.
No problem, Marty. And listen, thank you for giving me the spot on your podcast. And I'm catching up. I'm listening to all the shows. The David Adib one was insane. I haven't heard Dave talk a lot of stuff, in a long while. But that guy is, even what he says is mind blowing. It was really good. And I'd just like to say, if it's okay with you, just to thank all of the people that that have helped me along the way. One of the biggest twists that I had in my jiu-jitsu was when I visited the Vellante brothers in Miami. Those guys, Pedro and Guy, amazing guys. Guy visited us here, and if you get a chance, that's a place. If you like traditional Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, that's a real good place to go.
I was just down there a couple of weeks ago, actually. Well, about a month.
I really,
Yeah.
yeah, those guys are amazing. They're moving to another a massive place. They're building from the ground up. But Pedro is, he's legit. Guy is legit. I learned so much from those guys. The other one who I believe is kind of a hidden gem in the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu world is a guy called Mario Aiello. I don't know if you heard of that guy.
I haven't.
Look him up. This guy, he's old school, man. When I was training with Hickson in Beverly Hills, he was teaching there, and he's a monster. And I remember him when he had a full head of hair, colorful hair. I know he's not going to mind me saying because I'm the same. And he was a black belt when I walked in the academy as a white belt, So that's how long that guy's been training. He's a monster as well. He's part of Hoyler's network as well, part of the Gracie Almeida in the US. But yeah, anyone who's had an influence on me, I just want to thank each and every person, including my students as well.
Right on. Well, thank you, sir. And my pleasure and my honor having you on. So thanks again, and I wish you nothing but a long, happy, fulfilling life, sir, and healthy. Thanks,
Marty, and we'll keep in touch, and hopefully we'll catch up in a few years. When you're here in London, you come and train with us.
Absolutely.
And, we'll learn from you too. You're always welcome.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Take care, my friend. Thank you.
Okay, really enjoyed that interview with Professor Kone. Up next is the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment, and today's guest host is Kerry Hakoma, who is a holistic transformation coach, community developer, and champion builder. He's the author of the book Own Your Life, as well as has a very interesting and stimulating podcast called Own Your Life as well. If you want to know more about Kerry, you can go to www.kerryhakoma.com.
Hey, what's going on? This is Kerry Hakoma, Gracie Academy here in Torrance, California. Recently, I've been absolutely obsessed with a rather new concept called infosponging, and I've been doing it every day. Hope this adds value for you guys. The term infosponging was coined by billionaire Jeff Hoffman. He's one of the co-founders of Priceline.com, amongst many other successful companies that he's built. But what Hoffman did was that every morning, he would take the first 20 minutes of the day, no emails, no phones, no texts, absolutely nothing, for 20 minutes, and he'd leave his industry and his company, obviously mentally, and would literally allow his mind to wander freely. So what he did was he'd look at cross-disciplinary things and see what they're doing in, for example, the banking industry, the restaurant business, the entertainment business. Basically look at anything and everything that is not in his domain. So he'd then say, all right, well, what am I looking for? I don't know, but you know what I do? I write them down, and I write down everything that interests me. So, for example, he'd look at the Yahoo top 10 trends. You search, what are the top 10 searches on Yahoo? Right, easy to find, easy to click. So he'd say, okay, so what am I looking for? I don't know, but I write down things and say, well, this is interesting. So I write all the data points that are connected to it. He'd look at, for example, the new legislations or look at global events, presidency, whatever. He would just click and let his mind go on things that he would never look at otherwise if he wasn't intentionally infosponging. So what do you do then with all those things that you write down, right? What do you do at the end of the 20 minutes? You hold up that list, you stare at it, let it sink in. You become pensive, you meditate on it. Most days, it's just going to look like a bunch of data points or just words that are connected to a bunch of other words that don't mean anything to you. That may be true at that time. But you know what happens if you do this infosponging every single day? One day, a picture starts to eventually form. One day, all the dots start to connect, and then you say, wait a minute, if you merge this trend with this technology, with the announcement of these companies here, the trends along with all the data points you collected start to eventually connect, and that's where innovation happens. That's where breakthroughs occur. That's where you give yourself the ability and opportunity for personal transformation. I've had the privilege of growing up in church with a man named Rocky Seto, and I watched him play junior college football, Mount Sac, right, to transferring to playing for USC, then joining the coaching staff at USC after his playing days were over, where he would eventually follow Pete Carroll and staff and become the assistant head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. He obviously didn't know that this was called info sponging, but he was a prime example of it, right? So he was famous within the NFL and amongst the players for his unique coaching methods. So check this out. Rocky would spend a lot of his time watching Animal Planet, of all things, and studying the movements of predatory animals crouching down, getting ready to attack, and then just coming out of nowhere, exploding, and then tackling down their prey while running full speed, zigzagging, whatever it took, right? He would also study Bruce Lee's punching techniques and would come back and then teach his players how to punch the football out of the running backs or the wide receivers' hands, causing fumbles and turnovers and just becoming a defensive nightmare. And in 2014, the Seahawks then went on to become the Super Bowl champs, particularly by the superior defense, right? And they were called the Legion of Boom. So fam, I got to ask you guys, how can you info sponge today and become a better person tomorrow, right? Can you, for example, for the very first time, maybe observe your mailman or mailwoman who's been diligently delivering your mail for the last 10 years? I mean, what kind of wisdom or habits or skill sets can you pick up from having your potentially very first conversation ever with him or her? Right? Maybe can you skip a day of training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Can you sit in for a kids class instead? And see how watching and observing them can improve your character, perception, and ideals on certain matters of your life. Right? What can you let your mind wander on in order to become a better training partner, a better businessman or businesswoman, colleague, entrepreneur, husband, wife, brother, sister, a leader? All I got to say is this, that your great time is right now. I love talking about this, man. Info sponge your way to success and personal victories today. Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Podcast fam, thank you so much for existing. We love you here at the Torrance Academy. God bless. Have an extremely wonderful day.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. As always, I thank you for listening. I appreciate all feedback, so if you have feedback, please don't hesitate to give it. If you have ideas for the show or for guests, please let me know about those. You can leave feedback on the website at www.graciejujitsurocks.com. You can also leave feedback on iTunes, and while you're there, make sure to rate the show. It helps us with our standing in iTunes. If you haven't liked us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter, please go ahead and do that. And don't forget to share the episodes on your Facebook and social media. Again, thanks again for listening, and until next time, this is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.